In the last hour, President Biden has been speaking at the end of that visit to Israel, and he warned Israel to learn from America's mistakes after 9/11 and not to act in rage.
Justice must be done. But I caution this: while you feel that rage, don't be consumed by it. After 9/11, we were enraged in the United States. While we sought justice and got justice, we also made mistakes.
Well, as well as those passages aimed and directed at Israel, and of course he referenced those attacks of 11 days ago. He said it was the worst loss of life since the Holocaust. He then went on to speak about the Palestinians inside Gaza, and he said the Palestinians were suffering greatly because of the fighting.
We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world. I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we have seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. The United States unequivocally stands for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and I truly grieve for the families who were killed or wounded by this tragedy.
Well, that was Joe Biden in the last 60 minutes. So what are we able to actually establish with any certainty about the attack on the hospital? Well, our diplomatic correspondent, Caroline Hawley, has been working with our colleagues at BBC Verify.
Ever since the explosion happened last night at around 7 p.m. local time, the BBC Verify team has been analysing all the images and video that have emerged. You can see where the hospital is located within Gaza City. And this footage shows what appears to be the courtyard car park of the hospital in flames. We've been able to establish that that's what it is from the shape of the buildings. Now, the Al Jazeera television station was broadcasting live from Gaza at the time. You can see a series of bright lights in the air. We don't know exactly what these are. The Israeli army says there was a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad. Then you can see a flash, and that's followed shortly afterwards by a big fireball. Our verification teams have looked at these images and can tell from the roofs and from other skyline details illuminated by the flames that it was in the main courtyard of the hospital. Next, they've been looking at daylight images taken this morning. Here you can see quite a lot of fire damage to the cars, but most of the buildings surrounding it are still mostly intact and standing, and there's actually a relatively small crater. Now, we've shown these images to a number of weapons experts, and while they couldn't come to a firm conclusion, several of them told us that if the explosion had been caused by the type of bomb normally used by Israeli forces, the crater would have been bigger and there would have been more damage to the buildings. One way of trying to establish what hit this hospital is by studying bomb or missile fragments at the scene, but our team on the ground and the team here haven't seen any. Now, look at this image we found from last night of two men searching through the crater we showed you earlier. The logo on their vests is from the Palestinian police, from the Explosive Ordnance Department. We don't know what, if anything, they recovered. The Islamic Jihad movement put out a statement today saying the explosion was caused by Israeli aerial bombing and claiming that they have the remnants of the explosive head, but they haven't yet provided any evidence of this. What's not in dispute is that there were a very large number of casualties, according to Palestinian officials. Mostly, we think, of people who've been sheltering in the hospital from Israeli airstrikes, sleeping on the grass here. To establish the exact truth of what caused them, you'd need an independent investigation, but that's not going to happen in what is an active war zone.